Okay, so it's 4 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. When you sign on now as an admin, this is your first landing page for TransIT. And anytime you want to get back to it, you just click home up here. And so you have 3 different sections currently that show. One is about the users that are on the system. It shows you the number of users have been active this hour in the last 10 minutes. And if you want to get to a list of who's currently on, you click this and it takes you into that list. Right now, there's 2 other sections, one for viewing test rounds and active rounds of testing, and the other one is for showing you positions that you're due up in testing for. So if you happen to do testing, then it'll have things here. If you have no position selected, it'll say no position selected here. What isn't here yet, and that's going to be coming soon, is going to be similar views to this for plans. So plans that are active and plans that you have activities in. But again, it's different for each position. So your users and testers will have a different view, and it will have items here that pertain to what they're interested in. What we're mostly going to be going over today are the changes for admins. The first change is that if you want to get to your user settings, you click on your initial here, and it brings up the account setting page where you see sign out and change password. There's 2 other sections currently. One is for saying what your email address is that you want to receive emails to, and the other one is for the phone numbers that you want to receive text messages to. And then there's another box for test rounds where you want to specifically say whether or not you want to receive texts or emails or both for test rounds. And then similarly, there'll be another box in the future for plans. The next area we're going to go to is the org settings. Instead of org settings being up in the menu here, it's now beside your organization name. To get to the org settings, you just click the building icon and it takes you inside. We're going to go through the things that are changing in here and then ask anyone for any questions on the org settings. And then we'll just move to the test rounds for a short period before we finish for the day. The first org setting is the custom files. And the custom files are for building drop-down lists in plans. So if you're using TransIT plans and you want to be able to use a list of things over and over again, it's best to build it in this area. If somebody needs to build a custom list and you're on vacation and there's no other admin, they can temporarily build a list themselves, but you're going to want to build in here anything that you use over and over again. The types of things that you would build are things like if you have work stream names that are responsible for different areas of a project, you could build your work stream names in here, and then they would be available to select in a drop-down list in the plans. Other things in here are things like training methods or categories of things that you want to track, or if you just want to even have a simple yes, no drop-down list, you can build that here. Again, if you don't build it, it's not a huge thing because they can build it themselves. It's nice to build things that you're going to use multiple times in here. If you want to build a custom list, you just click the Add Custom List. Oops. It needs to start with the word custom now. I'm going to be putting in an enhancement request to ask that you not have to put custom in the front of it, but for now it has to have the word custom in the front, and then, whatever it is. Once you save the list, you go back into the list, and then you click Add Custom Workstream, or it'll be custom whatever you called it, and you put in the name and then the display and click Add. So or whatever you want, and that's how you build the list. This mark for deletion is different in TransIT 7 than what we had in TransIT 6. So in TransIT 6, if you didn't want to have something anymore, you'd right click and activate it. Now, if you want to say that you don't want it available in that drop-down list, you would just mark it for deletion, and inside the plan under work stream, when they chose which work stream, the only thing showing for them now would be registration. And if you remove that, tick again, then they would see both reg team and backend revenue cycle. So that's how you go and build out a custom list. So if you're not using plans now and are thinking about using it, it's worthwhile to have a discussion with the group about potential drop-down lists that you want to build in advance. The next thing then is facilities, and what's different here is in TransIT 6, you didn't have the ability to set up your own facility. If you wanted to set up a facility, you needed to contact us. Now you just go in and build it yourself. And again, to add a facility, you put in the facility name, you can put in a description if you want. And you click save, and it's immediately available for use. Again, if that organization, if you sell that facility, it's no longer part, you mark it for deletion. So your old test rounds will still be able to bring up the Brown Hospital because it hasn't really gone anywhere. You've just marked it for deletion, which means that anywhere where you were choosing a facility, it won't be available to choose anymore in your test scripts, etc. The next org setting then is issue categories, and your issue categories are going to come across tonight from TransIT 6 into TransIT 7. So if there's something you don't like there, then you can mark it so you can inactivate it in TransIT 6 and it won't come across, or you can just let it come across and then you would mark it for deletion. For issue category, you may or may not want to set a default. So if you set a default, it means that it's going to always default to that and the user will be able to change it. So if 90% of your issues are build issues and you know that, then you could have a default selection of build and it would automatically default in. Or in this case, because we don't have anything that is routinely selected, we've left the default blank, and either option is fine. The next thing then is the issue impact. So in TransIT 7, we've changed the way issues work. You have the severity of an issue and the impact of an issue, and those two things go together to determine what the priority is going to be. So if you're working with a issue tracking system that has that sort of feature now, then I would suggest maybe you try to make it marry that. So in this case for us, we've built for impact, extensive, large, limited, and localized with these descriptions. Affects all positions with a large number of processes being impacted down to affects a single user and has no effect on organizational processes. If you choose something like this, and if they're not alphabetized and you want them to be either from least impact to highest impact or highest impact to least impact, then you can use the sequence feature, which has always been available as well. And again, there's the mark for deletion. And again, you might want to pick, a default of limited or something like that, depending if you have any data on what the most selected one is, or you can leave it blank like we've done here. So then you have to build your priorities out. So you all have priorities now in TransIT, and you might consider changing those now, or you can think about changing them afterwards. Either is fine. So you can see we didn't change it for this organization before the mock conversion was done. And so Blocker came across and we've decided now we don't want to use that. We want to use P1, 2, 3, and 4 for the first priority down to the fourth priority. And then we've also built one for question. Because the priorities are signed by a matrix, if you want to use this question, then in our database, what we would need to do is blank out the impact and the severity, and then we would be able to manually select the priority of question. So again, if you don't want to have question, you don't have to have it. If you don't want to use P1, 2, 3, 4, you want to use whatever you've been using forever, you can still do that. And again, you could have a default, but the default doesn't make sense here if you're using our matrix. Was somebody going to ask a question? No, okay. So then the next thing after that is the severity. And so for severity, we've chosen critical, high, medium, and low. And in this case, we did use the sequencing because I wanted them to show up with the most severe first and the least severe last. And again, you can put in a description if you want, or leave it out. It is good to have a conversation with the team, though, especially if you've got an organization-wide issue tracking system, and try to marry the two if you can. So then the final, oh, sorry, no, then statuses are just going to come across. So statuses aren't new. So whatever you had before, that's going to come across. And again, you always had the ability to go in and say which statuses were open and which statuses were closed. And the ability here as well to have a default selection or to mark it for deletion. So there's some sense in having open be defaulted here. So that anytime anybody logs an issue, it starts with open, and that will mean that's one less tick they have to do when they are in updating things. Everything will automatically start as open, and then when you assign them, you can move it on to assigned, etc. Again, here I've sequenced them so that this is the general progression of an issue, that first it gets assigned and then is in process, and then it gets resolved, then it goes to CAB for approval, then it gets approved, and so on. So there is some sense in sequencing these ones if you haven't done that in the past, and you can do it either before we take the system down today or when it comes up, or decide to not do it. So then the final thing on issues is the priority matrix, and that's new. So these names come from the severities, and these names come from the impact, and it just creates a matrix for you. And what you're going to need to do is go in and select your drop-down priorities. So if you didn't call yours P1, 2, 3, 4, then that won't be in the drop-down list. It'll be whatever you called yours. So if you called yours priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4, or if you top a high, medium, low, or whatever you put in for your priorities, that's what'll show up here. And again, we've chosen to go with 1, 2, 3, 4, and so that's what's showing up. And then, you can think about what you want the priorities to be. So we've said if it's critical and extensive or large, or if it's high and extensive, we want those to be P1s. This next group here, we want to be P2s. This next group here, we want to be P3s, and everything else we want to be P4. So again, that's you working with whoever manages whatever your organization-wide issue list is to see if you want this to marry up to it or if you want it to be completely different. The next thing then is the note statuses, and in there as well, you can default, most of you probably have these as your note statuses. If we build them for you, we've usually build new, reviewed, addressed, and canceled, and you always want to default it to new. Again, like we've sequenced them so that they go in an order that they would progress as opposed to going alphabetically. And those will come across exactly as you have them today. Note types, again, I would say 95% of all notes that have ever been logged in TransIT since day one have been script change issues. So you probably do want to have this one default in for you. And there's also the ability to mark it for deletion. Plan categories. So if you are using TransIT plans, you're going to want to build a plan category. I believe in the conversion that anything you had as an existing category came across. So categories used to just be free text. So you might want to look at that because, if somebody spelled cutover CUT space OVER and somebody else spelled it cutover as one, I think both will come across. So you're going to want to just look at this, for example, and see if it makes sense. So these are categories of plans that you could build in TransIT, and every organization might have something different. So for example, one of our clients is using it for marketing, for tracking their development of articles for their website. So they have a category of marketing. Positions, your positions are going to come across. The position logins are a little bit different, and the positions are a little bit different as well. We flattened them out. So in both cases, there used to be a facility. The facility is gone now. So if you do have the same positions for all your facilities, then there was no need to build out multiples. So the idea is that you will just have a list of positions here. And then if, so the logins is changed as well. So the logins now, it's position, vendor, username, password, but no facility here. So before there used to be a default if you had the same username, password across all facilities, but I know some people thought you had to build out the facilities. So we've done the best we can to bring those across for you. And now if you wanted to have a accessioner, for example, at one of your facilities that was entirely different than your other facilities, then you would have to build an accessioner dash the facility name or something like that, because we no longer have it in the hierarchy. Almost nobody was using it, so I don't think that's going to impact you greatly. If you were using it and you need some assistance with that, just log a email to support@makesolutionsinc.com. The next thing is projects. So projects used to reside under tasks, and tasks have gone away. So tasks are no longer the base building module for test scripts. It's now modules. So since tasks don't exist, projects have to go somewhere else, and so it's now under org settings. When everyone looks at their org set or their projects, they should have a project built for everything, and including, it'll be all your ones you currently have, including current state, which should likely be selected as the default. If you're working on a major project and you're doing test script development and you're doing a different project, then you could certainly temporarily change this to be whatever project you wanted, or even permanently change it to be another project. Additionally, you should all have a project called deleted, and deleted should be marked for deletion. The point of the deleted project is to move content that you want to delete, because we don't, in TransIT 6, you could inactivate things and then bring them back from being inactivated. Now, instead, what you do is you change their project to be deleted, and that stops them from showing. And if you wanted to get back to them, you'd have to come here to the projects. You'd have to unmark the deleted for deletion, find what you want, move it to a current active project, and then come back and tick this. Does anybody have any questions on that? And again, if you forget, just log a ticket and we'd be more than happy to re-explain that. Roles. I had a question today. Somebody wasn't sure what the difference was between roles and positions. Positions are for using in the test scripts, whereas roles are for using in your plans. So if you're using plans and or you're just starting to use them, it's a good idea to have a sit down with the people who are going to be using the plans and find out what roles they need in there. So again, if you are using it in marketing, you might need things like content approvers. If you're just using it internally in IT, it's probably a good idea to have all your team names listed there. You might want to have project management listed. If you're using it for cutover plans, you're going to want to have things like command center lead or command center assistant or executive on call or things like that. So what's built in your role is going to be based on the scope of use of your projects. Script details have changed significantly. So before you didn't have access to the script details, and now you do. So for everyone, you will have all of the 272 that are currently live in production, but you have this new button up here that allows you to create client-specific script details. And so the only thing we're cautioning people on is make sure if you add one, if it's one you think that everybody else will use and it's one that you think we'll be developing content on, just get a hold of us first and tell us what you're going to name it so that we would name it the same thing, and then we'd all be able to share content as we can now. So for example, you have the ability to go in and change DOB to say date of birth. But if you did that anywhere in the content where we've referenced DOB, it wouldn't work for you, and you'd have to go into our content and change it to say date of birth. So it's probably not that sensible for you to change ones that are here, unless you're either not using our content or you want to go in and do those changes. Again, you can mark things for deletion. So if there's some things that you would never ever use and you don't want to see them in the hierarchy, you just mark them for deletion. But the more important thing is this default selection. So if there are things that you're always using in the headers, by you coming in and ticking this box here, it's going to automatically show up when they create a test script. So when I create a test script, as soon as I click save, it's going to automatically turn on all of those defaults. People might ask you questions about what they learned in the testing class. So if you're in a script and you've got a header turned on, so I'll just quickly go and show this. What you have the ability to do, sorry, I could have gone to it from that page, I just didn't. Down here, you have the ability to group things together. So in TransIT 6, if you had more than one appointment in a test script, it would be appointment type 2, appointment type 3, appointment type 4, and then it would be appointment location 2, and so on. But now instead you can group them together. So you can see here that we've got the appointment type, location, date, time, and resource group together, and then appointment type 2, location 2, date, time 2, and resource 2 all grouped together. So it makes it much easier to read. And if you wanted to add another, you would just highlight the ones you want and right click and say increment and add below. And then it adds in your appointment type 3. I was saying on the other call, you know, you might want to do that for vital signs too. If you're doing vitals repeatedly in your test script, then you might want to group those together and put those in as well. So it's just like a nice little piece of functionality that makes the script header much more readable. The next is users. So users as well is not in the top menu anymore. It's down here. All of your users should have come across, and that's going to include inactive users. The difference is that the inactive users will have this head with a slash through it here. I see I inactivated my tester position. That wasn't good of me. But anyway, and so this is how you get into the users. And then if you wanted to edit the user, you right click. Change password is available on the right click, or if it's something else you want to change, then you go in here. One thing I will say is you'll notice here the number is 36. The bottom here, the number is 27. That's because here we've chosen to show only the active users here, but inside the user page, it shows all users, active and inactive. Vendors, we've brought across vendors from what you have turned on currently in production, so that should marry up. Vendor applications is a bit different. So in TransIT 6, the hierarchy was vendor, product, application, and function. All we have in TransIT 7 is vendor and application. So your list of applications is going to be huge because it's going to encompass all of those 3 things together. But again, here we've given you the freedom to add and change the applications and have them be whatever you want. So again, hopefully everyone's validated that they see the things they expect to see here. And it's just, you know, a little bit different. It's a little bit simpler. Again, if you get a vendor and it's a new vendor and you want to find out if we've built in what we've called things, just, you know, log a ticket to support@makeSolutionsInc.com. If you're thinking that you want to use our content, you know, and you want to name things the same way. So especially if it's something where, you know, a whole bunch of clients are working on the same kind of functionality at one time, it's probably good to reach out to us. You will notice that this is sorted by application by default and not by vendor. So if you want to change the sort to be by vendor, all you have to do is click that and it sorts it by vendor. That is the last org setting. So does anybody have any questions about anything that I've shown? Okay, if not, we are working on a 4 or 5 page guide that we hope to send out tonight to everybody. That is the major differences between TransIT 6 and TransIT 7. And I'm not sending it to the whole distribution. I'm sending it to the admins or the lead admins at each site, and they'll hopefully distribute out to everybody. So for example, I know some of the sites have more than one admin. I guess this is the right group to ask. Do you want me just to send it to the lead admin that I normally send things to, or should I send it to the whole admin distribution? Okay, sounds like no one cares. So I'm just going to send it to the leads that I normally send to at each site, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, if no one has any questions, then we'll give you 5 minutes back. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.